now that we have all these different AI tools at our disposal, RevOps has to become builders of software.
Hi, and welcome to Soundbites. My name is Bill Binch with Battery Ventures. Today, we're very focused on AI and the role it's playing and impacting inside the go-to-market function. And to talk about that, we're going to have our guest, Yezi Peng, the head of RevOps at Pendo, join us. Welcome, Yezi.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Bill.
Always great to share ideas. You're one of the people I go to, one of the closely held people that when I want to get my pulse on what's happening out there, that I always know that there's something I'm going to learn. So I'm really looking forward to today. Yezi, our normal motion for these last few sound bites has been to talk about agentic AI use cases, but I think there's a few thoughts that I'd love to just jump into with you, which is the product orientation that you're starting to recognize inside of the sales function. Secondly is the evolving role of RevOps 3.0, the rise of the go-to-market engineer. And then lastly, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on how you are rolling out AI, the governance, the safety, the thoughts, the checks, the things that you need to look at to be able to be successful in doing that. So let me hand it over to you. The product orientation, I call it the rise of the engineer, right? You're seeing go-to-market engineers, forward deployed engineers, prompt engineers. You call it the product orientation shift, but love to get what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, great. Well, we are all certainly experiencing just so many rapid shifts in so many roles across GTM. And when we now live in this world where there's this incredible potential that is unlocked with these raw agentic capabilities, I do think that it is leading to this need for every single person to be more product oriented. And it's manifesting in a lot of different ways. You know, product life cycles are just getting so much faster. People are able to develop and launch products so much faster that I think the onus is starting to shift more and more towards the seller of needing to be the one who is deeply understanding the ICP and maybe experimenting more with messaging and positioning in ways that they haven't had to before, and having more of that product mindset of, okay, like we have these, raw capabilities, how do we actually apply them to our customers in a way that is purpose built for them? And I think in particular, we're seeing that play out a lot with RevOps, because the way I think about RevOps is historically, RevOps has been buyers and implementers of software, right? And more so, now that we have all these different AI tools at our disposal, RevOps has to become builders of software. And it's exciting, right? We are actually able to build a lot of these dream projects that we've been talking about in RevOps for a really long time, where it's like, oh, there's isn't that existing tool today that does what we want, and we can actually do that now. For example, one of the things that we're trying to build internally is just a very simple book building tool. Talk about something that RevOps teams spend weeks, months doing every single year. It's a very painful manual activity. Is there a way that we can, with a pretty simple tech stack, lovable Supabase, N8N, actually start to just build out, actually build in some of the basic logic rules that we have around book building and build a good first draft that, bypasses some of the really manual, painful efforts that we've had to do historically. So that's just one small example, but really exciting, this idea of, can RevOps be more of an internal PM in some ways, thinking about sales as the user, and build for our user. And then obviously, as you mentioned, a role that's getting really popular is the GTM engineer. And I do think about this role as sort of filling this existing gap between there's just so much power and potential with all of these tools, but they haven't necessarily been purpose built to what you need in your organization today. And how does the GTM engineer bridge that gap?
That's great. There's so many things to go into here, but that internal PM for sales really resonates with me, because I've been hearing for the last 6 months that word that you used, building. And you said at the beginning of your session here that RevOps was traditionally a group that bought and implemented tools. And the B word wasn't build, it was bought. And now I'm seeing RevOps teams on almost every organization I speak with rolling out, and it could be an integration, it could be a workflow, it could be an agentic AI type thing. It could be even as far as a pure application. Less of that I'm seeing, but nonetheless building. So you're absolutely right about that internal PM for sales. I think that's very widely being looked at today.
Yeah. And as part of that, we've had to be very intentional about how we launch all these new things to the field, because you also don't want to, just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. And as part of that, we have tried to be really intentional about some of the North Star principles of how we actually deploy some of these new things that we're building to the field. And a few different principles that we've really aligned around. So let's start with removing manual tasks, right? This is a very, very basic one. But if I think back to 6 months ago when we started to see the power of a lot of these vibe coding tools and a lot of these workflow and agentic tools, it was very easy to go straight to the, oh my gosh, let's do all the crazy new things that we've never been able to do before, right? Like, I would love to live in a world where we have way more intelligent territory design and intelligent dynamic lead routing, where it's not rule-based lead routing. It's actually based on, what are the reps that close these and convert these leads the best, and who has the most capacity, right? Like, you can envision a really exciting world where you can do things a totally new way. And not to say that we're not focused there, but the place that we decided that we wanted to start with was, we do know that reps and CSMs and BDRs spend a ton of time on things that they should not be spending time on. So let's start there. Let's remove all these manual tasks, these manual repeatable tasks, and get that off their plates. So one thing that we've done is automating just the first draft creation of a lot of different sales artifacts. So we ask all of our sales reps to build account plans and value hypothesis plans and joint value plans for their accounts. And currently, it's a very manual effort of trying to piece together a bunch of different information. And we've actually automated the first draft of that so they have something to start with, right? So one example of that. The other pillar that we focused on is being self-serve where possible. This is an obvious one. A third one is around minimizing the rep-facing tech stack. So this is one that a lot of people talk about. You want to minimize that chair swiveling. We have certainly done the pendulum swing of having way too many tools that we ask reps to use. So we've really tried to consolidate back to where do we want reps living and breathing, and let's build around that. The fourth one being, how do we avoid institutional knowledge points of failure? This is an interesting one with GTM Ops, where one example of this is, we have a lot of people across GTM Ops where they do one very important thing, but they're the person that knows everything about that domain, right? One person who knows everything about our CPQ instance, or one person that supports AIMER commercial, and they know everything about how we run AIMER commercial. When these people leave, it's really challenging. And with AI, you should be able to democratize all this information, including the unstructured information. And so one of the things that we've started to do is when someone leaves the organization or moves to a different role, we actually tell them to create a GPT of themselves. Literally tell this GPT everything that you do in your role. And then we literally, after that person leaves, ask the GPT the questions that we would have typically asked that person, right? And then the last one is the one that I think is most interesting, which is this idea of getting to 100% rep adoption is no longer the goal. I think in the past, we have actually stopped ourselves from launching a new process, launching a new tool, because we've said, oh, we have too much on the enablement calendar this quarter. There's no way we're going to be able to get all reps to adopt this one thing. Like, we're just not even going to do it, right? And trying to change that mindset so it's more, hey, if RevOps spends an hour building something and only 5 reps end up using it, but those 5 reps get a ton of value from it, it's probably worth it, right? And so it's lowering the barrier of what to actually launch. We still want to be intentional about it, but it's not around how do we get every single person in the field to do this one thing the same way. Maybe it's okay if we have 5 different account research tools, as long as everyone has the tool that, has access to the one that they like, that meets their needs. And then we sort of leave it up to the field to decide what they actually want to use.
Okay, this is a pretty comprehensive set of principles, and these clearly just didn't fall out of the sky. Yezi, how did you build these? Was this process of talking with other companies, other colleagues, and hearing what they were doing? Was it trial and error? What was your framework for how you built this out?
A lot of trial and error, a lot of learnings from things that we've done in the past. We also have this great cadence internally across RevOps, the enablement team, and data analytics. These are the teams that are very responsible for how do we drive adoption of things, how do we launch things to the field. And we have a weekly sync where we talk about these things. And so a lot of this has just been talking through it of what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, where do we think that we can make the most impact today. I think that's been really valuable rather than jumping headfirst into trying to just build for the sake of building. And that has given us a lot more focus and intentionality around where we focus our efforts because, as you said, you could sort of build anything now, right? And that can be kind of almost the lack of constraint can be scary.
Okay, got it. One more for you, because a lot of organizations are talking about and thinking about this go-to-market engineering concept. Can you share a little bit more of what that definition looks like inside of Pendo? Because I'm collecting tons of job specs of AI builders, of go-to-market engineers. There's a lot of names out there, but I'd love to hear how you're thinking about it and how you deploy it.
Hmm. So it's definitely a new role at Pendo, and I would say it is evolving as we speak. I think the high level idea is someone who has that builder mindset, who wants to figure out a new way of doing things. And what's actually been really interesting for us is focusing on hiring people who actually are earlier in their careers who don't have preconceived notions of, well, this is how you should do book building, or this is how you should, build account research process. I think someone who can come in with that intellectual curiosity of, okay, this is the pain point, and who wants to build a new way of solving that. That's been the orientation that we've been focused on. And so, there's some specific tools that our GTM engineers are attached to. So Clay obviously popularized the term themselves. We do use Clay here. Our GTM engineers do own Clay. We have a few other tools that our it's interesting, we have someone in the BDR organization called a pipeline engineer. So someone who's a BDR for a few months, and we convert them into a pipeline engineer. He does basically the same thing, but focused on prospecting workflows specifically. So there are a lot of things that we're doing around inbound, outbound automation with some of the tools that we have in place. But I think it's mostly around how do we have a constant pulse on all these, new tools that are constantly being launched in the market, all these different, agentic workflows. Like how do we have someone who really understands the landscape and is coming up with new ideas of how we use them internally?
This is so rich. Yezi, I'm going to remind you of something. 2 years ago, when you were on stage at the battery kickoff, I think there was a line around the block to come and talk to you based on some of the nuggets you dropped up on there. I suspect and anticipate the same thing is going to happen here. When people listen to this part of the podcast, they're going to say, like, I want to know more. I want to know Yezi. And I think your LinkedIn is going to light up. So I hope that happens for you. And I also hope that, it doesn't distract you too much. But this has truly been great. Thank you for joining us to share what you guys are working on inside of Pendo.
Great. As always, thanks for having me. It's always great chatting with you, Bill.
Awesome. Thanks.